The spoon stopped halfway to my lips when I caught it, the faint metallic tang hiding beneath the rich aroma of chicken broth. My nurse's instincts flared like a siren in my head. That wasn't just soup. Something else was in there, something that didn't belong. Vanessa's eyes were on me from across the table, her painted smile just a little too tight, her manicured fingers tapping rhythmically against the tablecloth. She said softly, "Go on, Mama Clara. I made it just the way you like. Extra time, no salt." My lips curved into a polite smile, but my heart was pounding against my ribs like a drum. I'd smelled this before, years ago in the hospital ward, when a young intern accidentally mixed up a sedative solution with a saline drip. That same faint, metallic, chemical odor that clung to the back of the throat. I pretended to take the spoonful, even letting a bit touch my tongue for show. Then I smiled at her, said delicious, and lowered the spoon into the bowl. Inside, I was shaking. I could feel it, the faint bitterness coating the back of my mouth. It wasn't right. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my daughter-in-law began to unravel. My name is Clara Mitchell, and I'm 68 years old. I was a registered nurse for 42 years before I retired. My late husband, Henry, used to joke that the only thing sharper than my needle was my tongue. I've been called a lot of things in my life. Too strict, too observant, too stubborn, but one thing no one ever called me was naive. I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, back when neighbors looked out for each other and a woman's reputation was her armor. My mama used to say, "Clara, always trust your nose and your gut. One'll tell you when something's spoiling, the other'll tell you when someone is." I've lived by that all my life, and both were screaming at me that something was wrong tonight. Vanessa Mitchell, my son's wife, is beautiful, younger than him by nearly 10 years. Tall, poised, the kind of woman who walks into a room and knows every eye is on her. She was sweet when she first came into our lives, brought me flowers on Mother's Day, helped me with my groceries, even cooked Sunday dinner when my arthritis got bad. But sweetness can rot, and I'd been feeling the sour beneath her sugar for a long time. Since Henry passed 2 years ago, my world has gotten smaller. My son, David, convinced me to sell our old house and move closer to him and Vanessa in Atlanta. "You shouldn't be alone, Mom," he said. "We'll take care of you." And at first they did. Vanessa called me Mama, hugged me often, brought me little gifts. But over time, things changed. She started making jokes about my old-fashioned habits, sighing when I corrected her cooking or told her not to overuse bleach on the kitchen counters. She wanted control over everything, even me. Still, I never imagined she'd go this far. The evening had started ordinary enough. Vanessa showed up unannounced, carrying a covered pot and smiling that magazine-perfect smile. "I thought I'd bring you some soup," she said. "David said you haven't been eating much." "That's kind of you," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. "But I've still got some leftovers from yesterday." "Oh, no, Mama Clara," she said quickly. "This one's special. Homemade chicken soup with love." With love. The words made my skin crawl. We sat in my small kitchen. She served me the soup herself, setting the bowl right in front of me, then folding her hands and watching too closely. I could feel the weight of her stare, the tension between her false cheer and my quiet suspicion. When I finally pretended to take that spoonful, her shoulders relaxed slightly. It was subtle, but I caught it, the tiniest breath of relief escaping her lips. She thought she'd done it. I dabbed my mouth with a napkin, smiling as though I was grateful. "You're too kind, Vanessa. It's lovely." Inside, I was already planning my next move. I spent most of my life around sickness, pain, and deceit. Hospitals can teach you a lot about people, their courage, their fear, and their desperation. I've seen husbands switch their wives' pills, daughters pocket their mother's morphine, even pastors lie to their dying parishioners. It's a strange world, nursing. You learn not just how to heal the body, but how to read the soul. So when Vanessa glanced at her watch for the third time and said she had to go, I knew she wasn't just leaving because of traffic. She wanted to get home before the drug, whatever it was, did its job. "Thank you for dinner, sweetheart," I said, my voice calm as still water. "Of course. Get some rest," she replied, grabbing her purse and heading to the door. As soon as it closed behind her, I stood up slowly, carried the bowl to the sink, and poured a little of the soup into a clean glass jar. Then I rinsed the bowl and left it to dry. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the quiet rage bubbling up inside me. She thought I wouldn't notice. She thought age made me slow. She forgot I used to be a nurse. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Henry's face, pale, sweating, the night he passed. He'd been sick for weeks before that, but his death had been sudden, too sudden. Back then, I told myself it was his heart. But what if? I sat on the edge of my bed, whispering to the shadows. Did she help you along, Henry? Did she start with you? Tears pricked my eyes, but I wiped them away. I'd never been the type to cry easily. No, now wasn't the time for tears. It was time to get answers. The next morning, I drove to the local clinic where my old friend, Gloria, still worked in the lab. We'd been nurses together for decades, survived more double shifts and emergency codes than I could count. Clara Mitchell, she said, smiling when she saw me walk in. I thought retirement would keep you off your feet. I need a favor, Gloria, I said quietly. And it's not the kind I can explain over coffee. Her smile faded as she saw the seriousness in my face. I placed the small jar of soup on her desk. I need you to test this, I whispered. Don't log it officially. Just tell me what's in it. Gloria frowned. What am I looking for? I hesitated, feeling the weight of my own words before I spoke them. Something that shouldn't be there. Something that could put me to sleep and not wake me up again. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, Clara. I'll run it myself. As I left the clinic, I felt the first cool breeze of autumn sweep through the parking lot. The air smelled like wet leaves and old memories. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around me and muttered under my breath, "You messed with the wrong old woman, Vanessa." By the time I got home, Vanessa had texted me. Vanessa, hey Mama C. How are you feeling after last night's soup? I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the screen. I wanted to type something sharp, something that would make her squirm, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I wrote, me, feeling a little tired, but soup was delicious. Thank you, dear. Let her think she's winning. Let her believe she's in control. That's how you catch a snake. You let it slither close before you strike. I spent the rest of the day watching old home movies of Henry. His laugh still filled the house like sunlight. Back then, Vanessa used to sit beside me on the couch, pretending to enjoy them. But now, seeing her reflection in those memories, I saw the truth. Her eyes had always wandered when she thought no one was watching. Her smiles were never quite real. And my son, sweet, hardworking David, he didn't see any of it. He was blinded by love, the way good men often are. I couldn't tell him yet. He'd defend her, call it a misunderstanding. No. I needed proof. Evidence she couldn't talk her way out of. As I sat there, I caught my reflection in the mirror across the room. Wrinkles and silver hair, sure, but there was still fire in these eyes. I whispered to that reflection, "You're not done yet, Clara. You're going to end this." That night, as the sun sank low and painted the walls amber, I boiled a pot of water and scrubbed every dish, every countertop, until the house smelled like lemon soap. Cleaning calmed me. It helped me think. If she really was trying to poison me, she wouldn't stop with soup. She'd try again. And when she did, I'd be ready. I'd seen too many good people die because they trusted the wrong hands. I wasn't about to become one of them. I sat by the window that evening, notebook in hand, listing every odd thing Vanessa had done in the past few months. The pills she offered after dinner for my nerves. The unsealed vitamin bottles. The way she always insisted I eat what she brought herself. Each item made my stomach turn. She'd been planning this for months. Maybe longer. I don't know when I fell asleep, but I woke around midnight to the sound of rain tapping against the glass. The world outside was quiet, peaceful, and yet, deep inside, I could feel the storm brewing, the one that would tear this family apart before it was over. I touched the small silver cross on my nightstand, whispered a prayer, and said softly, Lord, keep my hand steady when the time comes. Because I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. If you're still watching and this story has pulled you in even a little, if you've ever had to trust your gut or face someone wearing a friendly mask, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss what happens next. And before you go, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far Clara's story has reached. The next morning came heavy and gray, like the sky itself knew what was sitting on my heart. I brewed my usual cup of coffee, but the smell turned my stomach. I poured it down the sink, washed the cup twice, and just stood there, staring out the kitchen window at the wet yard. The roses Henry planted before he passed were blooming again. He used to say roses had two sides, the beauty you see and the thorns that keep you honest. Lately, I'd been seeing more thorns than anything else. My phone buzzed on the counter. I hesitated before picking it up. It was a text from Gloria. Ran that sample you gave me. We need to talk. Come in if you can. I didn't need to ask what she'd found. My heart already knew. I grabbed my sweater and purse and headed out the door. The drive to the clinic was short, but it felt endless. My hands kept tightening on the steering wheel. Every red light made me think about Vanessa's smile, the fake sweetness, the way she tilted her head like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. She'd sat right in front of me last night, watching, waiting, thinking I wouldn't notice. And all I could think about now was that she might have done it before. Maybe even with Henry. When I got to the clinic, Gloria was waiting for me in her small office at the back. She closed the door as soon as I stepped in, her face tight, serious. "Clara," she said quietly, "you were right to bring that soup in." I sat down slowly. "Tell me." It tested positive for benzodiazepines, pretty high concentration. That's a controlled sedative. Enough to knock out a full-grown man for hours if he eats a normal serving. For someone your size, it could have been fatal if you'd eaten the whole bowl. I stared at her, feeling the blood drain from my face. My pulse thudded in my ears. "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be, without a full talk screen." "But Clara," she hesitated, leaning closer. "This wasn't a mix-up. This was deliberate." I nodded once, unable to speak. There it was, the truth I already knew in my bones, now sitting between us like a heavy stone. Gloria reached over, touching my hand. "You need to tell your son." "I will," I said. "But not yet. I need her to show her hand." She frowned. "You're not planning anything reckless, are you?" I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes when pain is the only thing keeping you steady. "Reckless?" "No." "Careful. Very careful." When I left the clinic, I sat in my car for a long while. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick, heavy with humidity. I could almost hear Henry's voice beside me, soft and low, the way he used to sound when something troubled him. "You always know what to do, Clara. You always find a way." "Well, Henry," I whispered, "I guess it's my turn to find a way again." That evening, I decided to pay Vanessa and David a visit. I baked a peach cobbler, my husband's favorite, the way I used to when we'd have Sunday dinner as a family. If I wanted her to think I was still playing the fool, I had to act like nothing was wrong. When I arrived, David greeted me with that big grin of his. "Mom, this is a surprise." He hugged me tight, and for a moment, I almost cried. He smelled like the same cologne Henry used to wear, oak and spice and home. "Vanessa's upstairs," he said. "She'll be thrilled you came." "Oh, I just thought I'd drop this off." I held out the cobbler. "Peach, your father's recipe." He beamed. "You're the best. Come in. I'll get plates." I followed him inside, pretending to look around as though nothing was different. But I noticed the changes right away. New curtains, new rugs, expensive things. Vanessa had a taste for luxury that David's salary could barely cover. Maybe that was part of why she'd turned greedy. Maybe she wanted everything at once. She came down the stairs a minute later, smiling that same too bright smile. "Mama Clara, what a surprise." "I thought I'd see my favorite girl," I said, handing her the cobbler. "Brought you some dessert." Her smile twitched. "That's so sweet of you. You shouldn't have." "Oh, I wanted to." After that delicious soup last night, I thought I'd return the favor. I watched her closely when I said it, and sure enough, her eyes flickered. Just a small, startled movement, gone in an instant. But I caught it. She laughed too quickly. You're too kind. How are you feeling today? I smiled. Rested. Slept like a baby. For a second, she froze, then nodded. Good. I'm glad. We ate dinner together. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, small talk about the weather, and the neighbor's barking dog. But underneath it all, there was tension. I could feel her watching me, trying to gauge if I'd noticed anything strange the night before. I made sure to seem tired, even rubbed my temples as though I had a headache. At one point, she said softly, You should take better care of yourself, Mama Clara. You worry too much. Oh, I know, I said. But I always feel safe when you're around. That made her smile widen, but her eyes didn't smile with it. When dinner ended, I kissed David goodnight, hugged Vanessa, and left. As I walked back to my car, I could feel her gaze on me from the doorway. That same cold, calculating stare. I'd seen it before, in people who wanted to hide something but didn't yet know you'd already seen through them. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, turned off every light except the small lamp in the corner, and pulled out an old notebook from my nursing days. I began to write everything down, dates, conversations, what she'd brought me to eat, how she acted. If something happened to me, I wanted there to be a record. But more than that, I wanted to see the pattern with my own eyes. I wrote until my hand cramped, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. When I finally looked up, the clock read 2:17 a.m. My chest felt tight, not from fear, but from a quiet determination. Vanessa thought she was playing chess, but she'd forgotten who taught her how to move the pieces. The next morning, Gloria called again. I couldn't stop thinking about you last night, she said. Clara, you can't stay alone until this is resolved. I'll be fine, Gloria, I said, staring out the window at the soft light breaking through the trees. I've got my plan. Please tell me you're not. But I hung up before she could finish. That afternoon, I went shopping. Not for groceries, but for equipment. A small clock with a built-in camera. A digital recorder I could hide in my purse. I'd seen enough detectives on TV to know that evidence speaks louder than tears. If I wanted to protect myself and my son, I needed proof that no one could deny. 3 days later, Vanessa called again. Mama Clara, I made that soup again. You loved it so much. Can I bring you some? I smiled into the phone. Of course, dear. I was hoping you'd say that. I spent the next hour preparing. I placed the camera clock on the kitchen shelf facing the table. The recorder went under the couch cushion. My phone stayed on silent, within reach. And then I waited. When she arrived, she looked radiant, hair styled, makeup flawless, the picture of care and devotion. I brought you enough for 2 meals, she said cheerfully, placing the container on the table. David's at work, so it's just us girls. That's lovely, I said, pouring her a glass of iced tea. Sit down a while. Let's talk. She smiled, sat, and watched as I served the soup. I could feel her gaze burning into me. I took a spoonful, lifted it, and paused midair like before. You really shouldn't spoil me like this, Vanessa. You deserve it, she said softly. I let the spoon touch my lips, then set it down. You've really perfected the recipe. Her smile faltered slightly. You're not going to eat? Oh, I will, I said. I just wanted to say something first. Her brow furrowed. What's that? I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. You remind me of a patient I once had. A woman who tried to poison her husband. She thought she was too smart to get caught, too clever to be traced. You know what gave her away? Vanessa blinked, lips parting slightly. Dubba, what are you talking about? The smell, I said softly. You can't hide a metallic scent like that. It always gives you away. For the first time, she looked shaken. I don't know what you mean. Oh, I think you do. She stood suddenly, forcing a laugh. You're imagining things, Mama Clara. Maybe you're just tired. I should go. Sit down, I said, my voice low but sharp. I wasn't finished. She froze halfway to the door. I smiled faintly. I didn't eat it. Not last time. Not this time. You really should be more careful when you're dealing with someone who used to run an entire hospital floor. Her face turned pale. You think I would ever? Think, I said quietly.
No.
I know. For a long moment, the only sound was the clock ticking on the wall, the same clock recording every second. Finally, she straightened her shoulders, forcing a smile. I don't have to stand here and listen to this. You should, I said, because one day soon, someone else will make you listen and it won't be me. She grabbed her purse and left without another word. When the door closed, I exhaled slowly. My hands were trembling, but my heart felt steady. The camera had caught every word, every flicker of her face, every shift in her voice. Later that night, I backed up the footage on a flash drive and hid it in the hollow of Henry's old clock in the hallway. Then I sat on the couch, staring at the cooling bowl of soup. The smell of chemicals lingered faintly in the air. I whispered to the empty room, "The trap is set." And for the first time in weeks, I smiled, not with fear, but with certainty. I woke up before dawn that morning, the house still quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the old clock in the hallway. My head throbbed, a dull ache behind my temples that made me wonder if maybe I hadn't gotten all of that poison out of my system after all. The thought made my stomach twist, and I pushed myself slowly up from bed, clutching my chest for balance. My reflection in the dresser mirror startled me. Pale skin, dark circles, and that tired look that only comes from too many years of giving without getting anything back. I shuffled into the kitchen, the scent of coffee grounds hitting my nose like an old memory. I brewed a pot, the way I always had since before my late husband died, since before my son brought that woman into my life and changed everything. The machine sputtered and hissed as it worked, and I thought of how silence had become my only friend in this house. Silence and suspicion. The night before replayed in my head in flashes. Her smile as she watched me take the spoonful of soup, the way her hands shook just slightly when she placed the bowl down, and then the horror on her face when I collapsed. I remembered her whispering into the phone, her trembling voice saying, "It's done, baby. She's gone." I remembered lying there, recording every word, forcing myself not to breathe too deeply so she wouldn't hear. But the memory that hit hardest wasn't the fear. It was the betrayal. I raised that girl like she was my own when she first married my son. I took her to church, taught her how to make cornbread the way my mama used to, helped her through postpartum when my first grandbaby came. And this was how she repaid me, trying to put me in the ground like an old dog past its use. The coffee finished brewing. I poured myself a cup and sat by the window. The early morning light fell across the table, and I watched it creep across the floorboards. Outside, the neighborhood was just beginning to stir. Mrs. Green's little dog barked across the street, and I saw the mailman's truck parked 2 houses down. Normal life went on, as if nothing had happened. But my life had already changed. Around 7, I heard footsteps upstairs. Light ones, too light to be my son. That meant she was awake. I clenched the mug a little tighter, the warmth burning into my palms, grounding me. I couldn't let her suspect I knew. Not yet. Not until I had everything I needed. She came downstairs dressed in a robe, her hair wrapped up in a silk scarf, pretending she was just another happy wife starting her day. "Morning, Mama June," she said, voice soft, fake sweet. "Morning, baby," I answered, keeping my voice steady. "You sleep all right?" "Like a baby," she smiled, moving to the fridge. "You feeling any better from yesterday? You gave us a real scare." I smiled back. "Better. Just a little dizzy still." She opened the fridge and took out some eggs, humming as if her conscience was clean. Watching her move, I realized something. She didn't just plan it on impulse. There was preparation. She'd probably been studying me, watching how I cooked, how I ate, maybe even checking my medications. That kind of evil doesn't just wake up one morning and decide to act. It festers. I watched her crack the eggs into a bowl. "You want some breakfast, Mama June?" "No, thank you." I said, sipping my coffee. I'm not too hungry this morning. She turned, leaning on the counter. You sure? I was gonna make omelets. I'm sure, baby. My stomach's still queasy. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. She hit it quickly, but I caught it, the disappointment. Maybe she planned something for breakfast too. That thought made my blood run cold, but I smiled anyway, the same way I used to when I dealt with difficult patients who smiled right before they screamed. When she left the kitchen, I pulled my phone out from under the table and opened the recording from last night. I listened to her whispering into her phone again. I'm telling you, she took it. I saw her eat it. She should be gone by now. What do I do if he comes home? My son. She meant my son. I paused the recording, my hand trembling. I had spent years warning him about her temper, about how something didn't sit right with me. But he always told me I was overreacting. She's not perfect, Ma, he'd say, but neither am I. You just gotta let us figure things out. Now he was the one sleeping next to a murder. The plan formed in my head as I sat there, listening to the faint creak of the floorboards upstairs. I couldn't go straight to the police, not yet. I needed proof, full proof. They'd call it hearsay or say it wasn't enough. I needed her to confess again, this time with my son present. And I would make sure it happened. When my son came home that evening, the house was quiet. He kissed his wife on the cheek and came to check on me. Hey, Ma, he said, pulling out the chair beside me. Heard you scared everyone half to death yesterday. I smiled faintly. Guess I did. You feeling better? Much better, I said. Though I'm thinking maybe that soup didn't sit right with me. Could be food poisoning. His face tensed just a little, and I saw her freeze at the stove. Food poisoning, he asked. You think something was bad in the fridge? Maybe. You know I used to be a nurse, right? I can tell when something's off. There was a strange metallic taste. She turned around quickly, fake laughter spilling out. Oh, Mama June, you always notice everything. You know I put some extra vitamins in there for you. That's probably what it was. Vitamins? I repeated slowly. You mean like supplements? She nodded, her smile tight. I chuckled. Well, that's sweet of you, baby. Just make sure next time you tell me before you do that. Old folks like me don't handle surprises too well. She turned back to the stove, and my son gave me a puzzled look. I could tell he was trying to read me, trying to see if there was something more to my tone. I smiled to calm him, but inside, my heart was pounding. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned in slow circles. Every creak in the floor made me tense up. Around midnight, I heard her phone ring faintly through the wall. I moved quietly, slipping on my slippers and tiptoeing closer. Her voice was low, but I caught enough. I don't know what happened, she whispered. She's still alive. Yes, I gave her the whole dose. I can't do it again. Not with him here. There it was. The second confession. My pulse raced, but I forced myself to keep calm. I crept back to my room, turned on the recorder, and whispered into it. Date, October 12th. Time, 12:47 a.m. Recorded evidence of attempted poisoning by my daughter-in-law, Latrice. The next morning, I called in a favor. One of my old nursing friends, Camille, still worked at the local clinic. I told her everything, well, almost everything. I said I thought someone was trying to make me sick, and I needed the contents of my stomach tested discreetly. She didn't ask too many questions. She just told me to come in. The results came back by evening. Arsenic. Low dose. Repeated exposure. I sat there in my car outside the clinic, staring at the report until my hands went numb. It wasn't just last night. She'd been giving it to me gradually, maybe for weeks, maybe months. When I got home, she was in the living room, folding laundry like she didn't have a care in the world. Hey, Mama June, she said. You okay? Just tired, I said. Been a long day. She smiled. You want me to make you something light? Maybe soup? I laughed then, softly, but with a bitterness that surprised even me. No, baby, I said. I think I've had enough soup for a lifetime. She looked at me for a moment, suspicious. Then she shrugged and went back to folding clothes. I stood there, watching her hands move, and thought about all the times I'd let her serve me, all the times I'd trusted her. Now I had the proof. I just needed to choose the right time to use it. That night, I sat on my bed, holding my phone, and looked at my son's picture on the dresser. My sweet boy, who I raised alone after his daddy passed, who worked 2 jobs to support his family, who still called me Ma like he was 10 years old. How would he feel when he found out the woman he loved had tried to kill me? Would he even believe me? A single tear slid down my cheek, and I wiped it away quickly. No, I told myself. I couldn't cry now. I had to stay strong. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. I opened the recording app again, double-checking the files, and backed them up to my email. Then I set my phone on the nightstand and whispered into the dark, "Tomorrow, she's going to pay for everything she's done." I didn't sleep much that night. The old house groaned around me, and every shadow looked like a warning. But beneath it all was something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time: resolve. And in the faint glow of my bedside lamp, I smiled to myself and whispered, "Got you, Latrice. You just don't know it yet." The next morning felt heavier than usual, like the air itself was trying to warn me. Even the sunlight looked strange, filtering through the curtains, too bright, too sharp, as if it was exposing things that were never meant to be seen. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what I was about to do. My heart thudded hard in my chest, slow but steady, like it knew the weight of what was coming. Today was the day I'd end this game. I got up, slipped into my robe, and moved through the house with quiet purpose. The floors creaked under my feet, and I thought about how this house had held generations of my family, love, laughter, arguments, prayers. Now, it held secrets too, deadly ones. When I reached the kitchen, I saw Latrice already there, humming to herself while she packed my son's lunch. She looked radiant in that fake kind of way, bright lipstick, clean apron, and that practiced smile that made her look like the perfect wife. But I knew better now. I knew what kind of heart beat beneath that pretty blouse. "Mornin', Mama June," she said sweetly when she noticed me. "You're up early." I smiled. Couldn't sleep much. Still not feeling well? "Better today," I said, moving slowly to the counter. "I might even cook something later. Haven't made my boy's favorite stew in a while." She froze for half a second before smiling again. "That's nice, but you don't have to really. I've got dinner covered." I tilted my head, keeping my tone casual. "You sure? You've been working so hard lately. Let me take care of dinner for once." She looked at me, studying me, maybe, and then finally said, "All right, if you insist." She turned back to the counter, her back to me. I stared at her, thinking about how close I'd come to death because of her. How easy it would have been for her to smile like that while I was lying 6 feet under, my son crying over my grave. My jaw tightened, but I forced my expression to stay calm. I couldn't let emotion ruin my plan. My son, Marcus, came downstairs a few minutes later, adjusting his tie. He kissed Latrice on the cheek and then hugged me. "Morning, Ma," he said warmly. "How you feeling today?" "I'm all right, baby," I said, patting his arm. "You be careful out there." "I always am." He grinned and then turned to his wife. "Love you, babe." "Love you too," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. When he left, I waited until the sound of his car faded down the street before turning back to her. "I was thinking," I said, "maybe we could have a nice dinner tonight. Just the 3 of us. A family evening. What you think?" She smiled. "That sounds lovely." "Good," I said. "I'll handle the cooking." Once she disappeared upstairs, I sat at the table and let out a long, shaky breath. The thought of spending even another evening under the same roof with her made my skin crawl, but it had to be done. Tonight would be my chance to end this nightmare. After she left for work, I got to preparing. First, I called Detective Harris, the officer who'd helped me years ago when my neighbor's husband had gone missing. He still owed me a favor. I didn't tell him everything on the phone, just that I had evidence of a poisoning attempt and needed someone to witness a confrontation that might turn ugly. "I'll be nearby," he promised. "You just give me the signal." "Thank you, son," I said softly. Next, I checked my phone recordings again. Every word was still there, clear as day. Her admitting she'd poisoned me, her whispering to her lover, her fear that I was still alive. I backed up the files, once more just to be sure, then placed my phone in the center of the dining table where I could easily tap record later. By the time evening came, my nerves were buzzing like electricity under my skin. I cooked my son's favorite stew, the way I used to when he was little, beef slow-cooked with onions, carrots, and a hint of thyme. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and familiar, almost enough to hide the tension thickening in the air. Latrice came home around 6, all smiles and perfume. "Something smells delicious," she said, slipping off her heels. "Just a little something for my family," I said, stirring the pot. "Why don't you go set the table, baby?" She nodded and went to work, arranging plates and glasses neatly. I could see her reflection in the window glass, careful, precise, pretending everything was normal. She really thought she'd gotten away with it. Marcus came home just as the food was ready. "Now this is the kind of welcome I like," he laughed, kissing my cheek. I smiled and ladled stew into the bowls, my hands trembling slightly. I set one bowl in front of each of them and sat down. The air was thick with the smell of thyme and something else, tension. I forced a smile. "Dig in, everyone." Marcus took a spoonful and groaned happily. "Just like old times, Ma." Latrice took a bite too, smiling, though her eyes flicked toward me briefly. Maybe she was remembering how I'd almost died after my last meal. Maybe she thought I didn't notice. But I did. Halfway through dinner, I said softly, "I wanted to thank you both for being here for me after my little fainting spell." Latrice smiled tightly. "Of course, Mama June. We were worried sick." "Oh, I bet you were," I said, letting my tone sharpen just a little. Marcus looked up, sensing something. "Everything okay, Ma?" "Just fine, baby," I said, reaching for my phone on the table. I pressed the record button under my napkin. "You know, it's funny," I continued. "The doctor said my fainting wasn't from low blood pressure or anything like that. Turns out it was something I ate." Latrice's hand froze midair. "Oh," Marcus said, still oblivious. "What did you eat?" "Soup," I said simply. "Homemade soup." Silence. Latrice set her spoon down. "Well, you know, sometimes leftovers can spoil faster than we expect." "True," I said, locking eyes with her. "Except I had it fresh. And funny enough, the lab results said there was arsenic in my system." Marcus frowned. "What?" "Arsenic," I repeated calmly, my voice trembling just enough to sound vulnerable. "Someone's been slipping it into my food for weeks now." Latrice's face went pale. "That's ridiculous." I leaned forward, cutting her off. "Is it? Because I also have recordings. You remember last night? You told someone on the phone that I'd taken the whole dose." Marcus turned toward her sharply. "What is she talking about, Latrice?" Her lips parted, eyes darting from me to him. "She's lying. She's confused, Marcus. You know she's been sick. She's hallucinating." "Hallucinating?" I barked out a bitter laugh. "You think I imagined you whispering to your lover while you thought I was dead? You think I imagined you calling him baby?" Marcus's mouth dropped open. "Latrice, what is she saying?" I reached for my phone and pressed play. Her voice filled the room. She took it. I saw her eat it. She should be gone by now. The sound of her own voice seemed to hit her like a slap. Marcus's face drained of color. "What the hell is this?" I don't." I stood up, my chair scraping back. "You tried to kill me," I said, my voice breaking. "In my own home. After everything I did for you. I took you in like my own daughter. I nursed you through your first pregnancy. I prayed for you, defended you, and this is how you repay me." Her breathing quickened. "It wasn't like that, I swear." "Then what was it like?" I shouted, tears stinging my eyes. "Tell me." Marcus stood frozen, staring at his wife. "Latrice, please tell me this isn't true." She burst into tears. "I didn't mean to. I couldn't take it anymore. You were always here, judging me, making me feel small. You never wanted me around." I stared at her, heart pounding. "So, You decided to kill me? I just wanted you gone, she screamed. So, we could have peace. Marcus stumbled back from her like she was something unholy. Latrice. Right then, there was a knock at the door. She froze, her eyes wide. Marcus turned toward the sound. Who's that? I wiped my face and said softly, That would be Detective Harris. The door opened, and the detective stepped in, another officer behind him. Latrice gasped, looking at me like I was the devil himself. I had to be sure before I called them, I said quietly. Now they can hear everything. The officers cuffed her as she sobbed, pleading with Marcus to believe her, but he couldn't even look at her. When they let her out, I sank into my chair, shaking all over. Marcus stood there for a long time, staring at the doorway. Finally, he turned to me, his voice broken. Ma, why didn't you tell me sooner? I looked up at him, tears spilling freely now. Because, baby, I needed you to see who she really was. I needed you to know I wasn't crazy. He fell to his knees beside me and buried his face in my lap like he was a boy again. I'm so sorry, Ma, he whispered. I should have listened. I stroked his hair, the way I used to when he had nightmares. It's over now, baby. It's over. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't truly over. The poison might have been gone from my body, but not from my life. The betrayal lingered, sour and heavy. Still, as I held my son, I felt something else stir deep inside me, something fierce and proud. She tried to kill me, but I lived. She tried to silence me, but I spoke. And when she thought I'd fainted for good, I opened my eyes and whispered, Got you. The days after Latrice's arrest felt like living in a storm that refused to pass. The quiet of the house wasn't peaceful anymore. It was haunted. Every sound seemed to echo louder. The ticking of the clock, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards under my feet. My son Marcus hadn't been the same since that night. He barely spoke, barely ate. The sparkle in his eyes, the one I'd seen since he was a little boy, was gone, replaced by something heavy, broken. I understood that kind of silence. It was the silence of a man trying to reconcile love with betrayal. I'd been there before, years ago, when his father left me for another woman. Different betrayal, same wound. It cuts deep, right where you think you're strongest. One morning, I found Marcus sitting on the porch, staring out into the yard. The morning light made the lines under his eyes more visible. He looked older than his 34 years worn down. I brought him a cup of coffee and sat beside him without saying a word. We sat there like that for a while, just listening to the birds and the faraway sound of kids walking to school. Finally, he spoke. Ma, he said softly, do you think she ever really loved me? The question hit me like a slap. I looked at him, saw the pain in his eyes, and my heart twisted. I think she loved what you gave her, I said carefully. The stability, the home, the kind of man you are. He nodded slowly, but not me. I sighed. Son, people like her, they love as long as it benefits them. The moment you stop feeding their ego or their plans, they turn. He rubbed his face with both hands. I keep hearing her voice in my head, Ma. The way she screamed when they took her away. I keep thinking maybe if I'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have. I grabbed his hand sharply. Don't you dare blame yourself for her evil, Marcus. You hear me? That woman made her choices. You didn't put that poison in my soup. You didn't lie. You didn't call some man behind my back and plan my death. He swallowed hard and nodded, but tears rolled down his cheeks anyway. I squeezed his hand tighter. She hurt us both, I said. But we're still here, and that counts for something. He stayed quiet for a long time after that. Then he whispered, I can't even sleep, Ma. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face. I looked away, the morning sun burning against my cheek. Then it's time to take control back, I said. We're not going to let her haunt this house. Not anymore. That afternoon, I started cleaning. Not because the house was dirty, but because I needed to reclaim it. I scrubbed the counter she used to lean against, polished the silverware she'd once handled, washed every single dish she'd ever cooked with. Marcus watched me for a while, then joined in. Together we worked in silence, side by side, just like we used to before she came into our lives. When I opened the cupboard to throw away old spices, I froze. There, hidden behind a jar of nutmeg, was a small plastic bag filled with white powder. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. I didn't need to guess what it was. I knew. The poison. Marcus turned when he heard me gasp. "What's that?" I handed it to him wordlessly. His eyes widened as he stared at the powder. "You mean she kept it here? All this time?" I nodded. She must have been adding small doses every few days, testing how much I could take. His face went red with anger. "I swear, if I ever see her again, you won't," I said firmly. "She's exactly where she belongs." I wrapped the bag in a napkin and put it in a Ziploc bag. "We'll give this to the detective tomorrow," I said. "It's more evidence." That night, I sat alone in my bedroom with the lamp on. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, tired, older, but somehow stronger than I'd ever felt. There was a power in surviving what was meant to destroy you. My phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello." There was silence on the other end. Then a familiar voice, trembling. "Mama June, please don't hang up. Latrice." My whole body stiffened. "How did you get this number?" "They let me make one call," she said quickly. "Please. I need to talk to you." I almost hung up right then, but something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the nurse in me that always wanted to understand why people did what they did. "What could you possibly have to say?" I asked coldly. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said, crying softly. I wanted you to stop interfering. You made me feel so small in my own home." I laughed bitterly. "So, your solution was to kill me?" "I didn't want to kill you," she cried. "I just wanted to scare you. I thought if you got sick, Marcus would send you away. I didn't think it would go that far." "Don't you lie to me," I snapped. "You called your lover and told him I was gone. You said I took the whole dose. Don't act innocent now." There was silence, just her breathing on the line. Then, softly, she said, "He made me do it." "Who?" "The man on the phone. His name's Jerome. He said he'd tell Marcus everything if I didn't help him. He was blackmailing me." I didn't know what else to do. I sat back, my heart pounding. "So, you tried to kill me instead of confessing?" "He said it was the only way," she whispered. "Please, Mama June, I didn't mean to hurt you. You have to believe me." "I don't have to believe anything," I said sharply. "The evidence speaks for itself. You're a murderer, Latrice. And now you're trying to pin it on somebody else." "I'm telling the truth," she cried. "Please, tell Marcus I'm sorry. Tell him I loved him." I hung up. My hands shook as I set the phone down. I didn't know whether to feel pity or disgust. Maybe both. Because as much as I hated her, I could hear the fear in her voice. Maybe there was truth in what she said. Maybe she wasn't the only monster in this story. The next morning, I called Detective Harris again. I told him about the call, about the man named Jerome. He was quiet for a long moment. "Funny you mention that," he said finally. "We found messages on her phone from a guy with that name. He's got priors for fraud and extortion. Looks like she wasn't lying about that part." My stomach dropped. So he really was blackmailing her? Seems that way. But that doesn't excuse what she did, ma'am. She still chose to go through with it. "I know," I said softly. "But maybe she didn't act alone." "We're looking into it," he promised. After I hung up, I sat there, staring out the window. The world outside looked so normal. Kids playing, cars passing, people walking their dogs. But inside me, everything had changed again. Days passed. Then, one afternoon, Marcus got a letter in the mail. It was from Latrice. He didn't open it right away. It sat on the coffee table for hours. Finally, he handed it to me. "You read it," he said. "I can't." I hesitated, then opened it. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. "Marcus, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I let my fear turn into something evil. But please know that I never wanted your mother dead. Jerome said he'd hurt you if I didn't do what he asked. I was trapped, Marcus. I thought I was saving you, but I only destroyed everything. Tell your mother I'm sorry. Tell her I wish I could take it all back." There was no signature. I folded the letter carefully and handed it back. "She's scared," I said. "But that doesn't mean she's innocent." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I don't even know what to feel anymore." I reached out and cupped his cheek. "Feel what you need to, baby. But don't let her drag you down with her." Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about forgiveness. I'd seen a lot of death in my years as a nurse. I'd seen people cling to life with their last breath, and I'd seen others let go quietly. But betrayal, that kind of pain stayed long after the wound healed. Could I forgive her? Should I? I closed my eyes, trying to find an answer. But all I saw was her face, the fake smile, the trembling hands, the fear in her eyes when the police took her away. The next morning, I went to church for the first time in months. The choir was singing softly when I walked in, the same song they'd played at my husband's funeral. I sat in the back pew, hands folded, eyes closed. When the pastor started preaching about mercy, I felt something shift in my chest. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," he said. "It means setting yourself free." I didn't cry, but my throat tightened. Maybe it was time to stop letting her hold power over me. When I got home, I wrote a letter of my own. Not to her, but to myself. "Dear June, you survived. You were tested in ways you never imagined, but you stood strong. The poison didn't win. The lies didn't win. You did. You don't owe her forgiveness, but you owe yourself peace." I sealed the letter and tucked it into my Bible. Then I sat by the window, watching the sunset. Marcus came home later, looking tired but calmer. He sat beside me quietly. "You think it ever gets easier, Ma?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Not easier, but it gets clearer. One day you'll wake up and realize the hurt doesn't control you anymore." He nodded slowly, then leaned his head against my shoulder. "I love you, Ma. I love you too, baby." As the last bit of light faded, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the fear, the near death. But I also thought about survival, about how even in the darkest moments, I found my strength. Latrice might have poisoned my body, but she couldn't touch my spirit. And as I sat there holding my son's hand, I realized something. Revenge had never been my victory. Living, truly living, was. The flashing red and blue lights outside painted streaks across my living room walls like some cruel celebration. My heart thudded beneath my ribs, not from fear, but from the sheer relief that it was finally over. I sat on the couch, still in my housecoat, the faint metallic taste from earlier still lingering on my tongue. My phone rested in my lap, the recording app still running. On it, clear as day, was the voice of my daughter-in-law, Serena, sobbing and begging her lover to come pick her up before the old woman wakes up. I heard the officers speaking outside before the door opened. The same young cop from earlier stepped in, Officer Daniels, his face cautious but kind. Behind him was Detective Barnes, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp jawline and eyes that had seen too much. They both looked at me like they couldn't decide if I was a victim or a villain. "Mrs. Harris," Detective Barnes said, her voice steady. "We received your call. Are you feeling well enough to tell us what happened?" I nodded slowly, straightening up even though my body screamed from exhaustion. "Oh, I'm fine, Detective. More fine than I've been in years. She's the one you should be asking about." I pointed toward the kitchen, where Serena sat handcuffed on one of my dining chairs. Her mascara had smeared down her cheeks. Her once perfect curls hung limp around her face. "She tried to poison me," I continued, my voice trembling just enough to sound fragile, but not enough to betray the anger simmering underneath. "But I used to be a nurse. I know what rat poison smells like." The detective glanced toward the table, where the bowl of half-eaten soup still sat, a dark, grainy residue collecting at the bottom. Barnes gestured to one of the officers, who took photos of it, then carefully bagged the bowl as evidence. Serena broke down again. "It wasn't supposed to go like this," she cried, her voice raw. I couldn't take it anymore. "You were ruining everything, Delilah." I met her eyes, calm and unflinching. Ruining what, sweetheart? Your little affair? Or your plan to get my house after I passed away peacefully? Her lips trembled. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I cut in, my voice like steel. You wanted to get rid of me, just like you got rid of your mother. You think I don't know about her accidental overdose? I did my research, dear. The room fell silent. Even the officers paused. Serena froze, her eyes widening in shock. You're lying, she whispered. I leaned forward slightly. Am I? Or did your stepfather tell the truth when I called him last week? He seemed eager to get it off his chest. Said he always suspected you, but never had proof. Serena started shaking her head violently, her breath quick and shallow. The detective's eyes flicked between us. Officer, Barnes said quietly, take her to the car. As they led Serena out, she screamed over her shoulder. You think you've won, old woman? You don't know what he's capable of. The door slammed behind her, and the echo of her words lingered in the air like poison smoke. I closed my eyes and exhaled. My hands trembled as I clasped them together. That was the first real moment of quiet I'd had in weeks. Detective Barnes lingered. Mrs. Harris, would you mind explaining how you figured all this out? I gave a tired smile. It started with the soup, but the signs were there long before. I told her everything, from the day Serena moved into my house after my son Marcus lost his job, to the subtle shifts in her behavior. The way she'd accidentally mix my pills, how she'd watch me when I cooked, the strange bitterness in my food some nights. And then the phone call I overheard 2 nights ago, her whispering to someone named Jay, talking about how it'll be over soon, and then the house will be ours. I rubbed my arms. I knew she was up to something, so I played along. Pretended to be weaker than I was. Even stopped taking my real medication and switched to decoys just in case she tried to tamper with them. Barnes nodded, scribbling notes. And tonight? I chuckled softly, though my throat tightened. Tonight, I decided to test her. I made soup and left it simmering while I went upstairs. When I came back, she'd already filled my bowl. I took 1 spoonful, just enough to taste that metallic tang, and then I pretended to faint. She panicked. Started calling her lover, saying I'd finally gone still. That's when I hit record. The detective looked at me for a long moment, her face unreadable. That was risky, Mrs. Harris. I've lived a long life, detective. I wasn't about to let that girl finish me off without a fight. When they finally left, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. I walked to the window and watched as the patrol car disappeared down the street. My reflection in the glass looked tired but strong. The same eyes that once stared down life and death situations in the hospital now looked at a woman who'd survived betrayal from within her own family. Marcus arrived not long after, my son, wide-eyed, his voice trembling as he rushed in. Mama, what happened? I just got a call from the police. I stared at him, torn between anger and heartbreak. You tell me, Marcus. How long have you known? His mouth opened, but no words came. He ran a hand over his face, sinking into the couch. I didn't want to believe it. Serena told me you were getting paranoid, that you were mixing up your medications again. I scoffed. So you believed her over me? He dropped his head. I didn't know what to think. I thought maybe it was grief. Since Dad. Don't you dare bring your father into this, I snapped, my voice sharp enough to make him flinch. Your father would have seen through her in a second. He rubbed his eyes. I'm sorry, Mama. I swear I didn't know she'd go this far. The apology didn't heal the hurt, but I could see the regret in his eyes. That softened me just a little. I sat beside him, my hand resting on his. You married her, Marcus. You brought her into this home. I tried to love her for your sake, but love can't survive when poison's in the air. He nodded, tears forming. What happens now?
Now,
I said quietly. Now I rest, and you learn to choose better next time. The rest of the night passed in a haze. Every creak of the house made me tense. Sleep didn't come easy, not because of fear, but because of the storm of emotions swirling in my chest. Betrayal, relief, and a strange, quiet pride. By morning, the story had already made the local news. Elderly nurse exposes daughter-in-law's poisoning attempt, the anchor said. My phone rang nonstop, old friends, neighbors, even former patients calling to check on me. But the one call that froze my blood came around noon. The voice on the other end was male, smooth but menacing. You think you're clever, Miss Harris, he said, but you just made a big mistake. I knew immediately who it was, Serena's lover, Jay. You'll pay for what you did to her, he hissed. You don't know who you're messing with. I didn't respond. I just let him finish his little speech before saying calmly, if you're smart, you'll stay far away from me, because the police already have your name, and I'm not the weak old woman you thought I was. Then I hung up. I stared at the phone for a long moment, my heart racing. This wasn't over. Serena was behind bars, but Jay was still out there, and if what she said was true, he was dangerous. I stood by the window again, clutching my rosary, whispering a prayer under my breath. Lord, protect me. Give me strength for whatever comes next. Outside, a black car slowed as it passed my house. It lingered just a moment too long before driving off. A chill ran down my spine. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. But as I looked at my reflection again, wrinkled, weary, but unbroken, I smiled faintly. I'd survived worse than this. And if Jay thought he could scare me, he was in for a surprise. Because this time, I wasn't just fighting for my life. I was fighting for my peace. And I wasn't about to lose either. If this story had your heart racing or gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss another story like this. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what would you have done if you were in my shoes?